Hello everyone, my name is Aliphine Tuliamuk. I am a professional runner for Hoka One Northern Arizona Elite. I am an Olympian from 2020 Summer Olympics in Tokyo. I am a new mom to our daughter Zoe, who is 14 months old, but most importantly, I grew up in rural Kenya. So let me tell you about my village. Let me tell you about my life in rural Kenya. So when I was growing up, school was very new. School was something that we thought it was only for boys, surprisingly, and parents didn't really want to pay money to take their children for school because most people in our villages are farmers and subsistence farmers for that matter. And so it's like all the children will go to the farm to help with tilling land so that we can have enough food for the family. And so in my family, I'm one of 8 children from my mom, but I'm one of 32 children from my dad because my dad is a polygamist and he's married to 4 wives, and I'm one of the oldest ones. And so during our time when we were young, like we were some of the oldest ones in our entire village to actually go to school. And in fact, when I graduated from high school, there was only 2 other girls that started school with me that actually graduated from high school. All of the other ones got pregnant and were married off at a very young age. In fact, my older sister, Lucy, she got pregnant when she was in 7th grade and she was married off, which is very sad. And I can't even imagine that now. Like, when you think about a child in high school here, if you think about them, if they were to get pregnant, you definitely will want to help them so they can get back to school and get back to their lives because they are very young. But my sister was married off when she was in 7th grade, and that was very common for a lot of families. But lucky for me, though, running saved me. Before I started school, I was given away to go stay with my aunt who hadn't had children at the time, and so I was supposed to be the one helping her. And when she had her own children, I babysat 4 of her children before I discovered running, and I had to move away so I could go to a different place where I could continue training and focusing on my running. So our village, even today, we don't have electricity. And my mom lives 2 miles away from school, which is also the place that we have our little shopping center where we would get like sugar, salt, and kerosene. Because at the time and even now we use tin lamps, which uses kerosene for lighting, and most families didn't afford to buy kerosene every day, so you would just buy kerosene once in a blue moon, and most families will just use fire for lighting, including my family. And so like a lot of kids who were going to school couldn't study at home. For one, they didn't have the resources for lighting, but 2, they didn't also have books. Parents, which majority of 99% of our parents are not educated. They don't have in fact, they don't have the basic education like my parents. They can't read or write. And so like a lot of parents think that when they send their children to school, they will get all the resources that they need there to be able to study, and when they come home, it would be time for them to help the parents. And so it's like school is the place where you study, and you get to school say at 8 a.m. and leave school at 4 p.m. And once you got home, you had chores at home to do, and so you didn't have time to study. In fact, the very first time that I had to study at home was when I moved away from my aunt's home to go live with a distant relative who encouraged me to pursue running more. And he is a teacher and his wife is also a teacher. And so they definitely had the money and the knowledge to make sure that their children, got a better education. And so we would eat dinner every night at 7 p.m. and they made sure that we went to a different room and studied for 2 hours. In fact, it wasn't like a conversation. It was like after dinner you had to go study, and they had books. He is the first Geoffrey, the distant relative I'm talking about, is the first person to buy me a small storybook. It was the very first time that I ever had my own storybook, and that was when I was in 6th grade. And so like in his home he had like dictionaries, he had like encyclopedia. And so, and like, he had other books where we could read, and I would use the encyclopedia to like, find words in science and stuff like that. And I ended up being really good, especially in chemistry and biology, which is something that I liked. And now, like in college, I graduated with a degree in healthcare, and I still plan on pursuing another degree, in healthcare eventually, because I would love to be a nurse so I could go back to my village and, help people. But like, our schools were so poorly staffed, for one, and two, the books were not there. In fact, I don't think even today there's any rural school, primary school or high school that has a library. I don't think we have any school like when I was that has that. And when we were growing up, we shared a book, like at least 5 kids shared one book. And you can imagine if it's like a 45-minute lesson, the teacher would say, hey, go to page say page 45, and then I would go to page 45, I will see what's happening there, and then I'll pass the book around among the 5 people that we're sharing a book with. And you can imagine that you wouldn't get much accomplished in 45 minutes of class. And so because of that, like rural schools in Kenya underperform every year. Like the schools that do really, really well are the city schools, because one, they have the books, they have the library, they have the electricity, they have the internet, and they're always the ones that are performing well. A lot of rural schools, they can't even meet the average grade. Like right now, in Kenya, you have 5 subjects. And so the grades is out of 500, each subject is given like 100%. And some of the rural schools, some of them don't even have a child that gets 250 marks. Like say out of, I don't know, 20, 40 kids in a class in 8th grade, none of them reaches the average, which is 250 marks, which is very sad, because you think like, it's not like those children are not smart. It's just that they don't have the resources. They don't have good teachers. They don't have the books, they don't have the electricity to be able to study. And so when Roy reached out to me last year, I remember thinking, oh my God, I don't know if I have time for this. But once I learned about what they were doing, I was really excited, because I wanted to have an opportunity to give back to my community. And one thing that, I would want those kids in our community to do or to have is books, to be able to read, to be able to get the opportunity that I got, because I know that if I hadn't stayed with my relative Geoffrey, who like enabled me to study because they had the books and they had the lighting, I wouldn't be where I am today. And so I think that by supplying books from Library of Kids, a lot of those children will have the opportunities that I had, like to be able to read when they're young, and to be able to have a vision of, oh, I want to pursue a higher education, I want to go to college. And a lot of those children, just like city kids, they're very smart. They just need the necessities. They just need the basic needs to be able to get there. And I think that, giving them books would be one of those resources that is the greatest resource. It's like it opens those children's minds to a whole new world of possibilities. Like when I left Kenya, I never knew what America was like. I never knew if I would survive here, because I didn't know anyone. But today, it's like I am so grateful for how far I have gone, for the fact that I was able to get a college education. I was able to study in a really good college. In fact, one of the first classes that I did was a research class in my Sociology 101 class. And we had a research, and I don't even remember what I got, but it was terrible, because I had no idea what a research was. I'd never heard of that word, actually. And in our rural schools, obviously we didn't have the capacity to even think about research. And even in our high schools, we didn't have to do research, because again, we don't have internet. And so to be the person that I am today, who I can do a research, I can write a really good paper, it's kind of incredible what happens to a human being when you give them the opportunity. And I think, the gifts that we are giving these children through textbooks will take them, ways away. I think that, my hope is that someday, we would be able to have textbooks for every child, and would be able to have a library where if a child wanted to read a story about something, they could go to the library and get that. When I was in high school, I loved reading books. I loved reading, like novels, storybooks. And I would go to the library and I would literally read a book like every day, because I would read the short ones, the short stories, and I would read a book every day. And I really think that helped me to be the person that I am today. Like, my peers were surprised why I was so interested in reading, and I think part of that was just the fact that I never had the opportunity, to have those resources when I was younger. And like, I think about our daughter, like, who is only 14 months old, and we read to her every night, or at least make a point of reading to her every night. And I'm thinking, like, the first words that she's gonna say, is something that we probably read to her. And by the time she's able to talk, she's probably gonna be able to read very, very young. And that's just amazing because of the opportunities that she has. And so I think that what Roy and everyone else, associated with Library for Kids is doing is an important work. And thanks to you guys, who are willing to help in whichever way possible. You are definitely changing lives of those children. I would love to be able to go back to my village and find teachers, who come from that village, because they had a really good resource growing up. They were able to go to school and pursue, the career path that they wanted to do, and then went back to the village and, give back to their communities. I would hope that, in future we would have doctors, because even today we still don't have doctors or hospitals in rural Kenya. And like, if we had a doctor, from our village, I'm sure that they would want to go back and give back to the village. And so I think that this is the opportunity to, like, give those people, a better future through a simple thing like a book. I really hope that we will get to a point where, like, we'll be able to supply the schools with, the books that they need in their curriculum, so that, the kids, each kid can have a book. And if they wanted to take a book home and do their homework, they would actually have that. They would have enough books. It would be really amazing to get to a point where, like, every child had a book. They could go to the library and get a book, like, I think it would make a lot of difference. And so I'm very grateful that Roy reached out to me, because, giving back to my community, it's something that I've always been thinking about, but then I just didn't know how until now. And in fact, I was speaking with my brother. By the way, speaking of the books, 4 schools in my in my village, basically, 4 schools received books last week. And my brother sent me a video of the kids, just excited about getting the books. And like, to see a child smile because they have a book, to see teachers smile because they know that they will be able to give their students the resources, the knowledge that they need, that is just very fulfilling. And so, like, so 4 schools received books last week. My hope is that most of the schools, if not all of the rural schools in my village and in Kenya, gets, those books, because there's been a lot of schools, a lot of new schools, that are being built, or that I just started. And in fact, my brother was telling me that he, like, when he went to talk to teachers from the 4 schools that received books last week, there were so many other teachers from that, like, community that were like, we really need these books, and I didn't really think about it. I just was thinking, well, we can start with 4 schools that I know very well, that I actually attended, or like my siblings are going to. But I'm hoping that we can get to a point where a lot of those rural schools, will be able to get, books and eventually libraries, because that could really change, the trajectory of those children. And it will be an honor for me to see that. But more importantly for you guys, to be able to do something so small yet impact someone's life for the best is something that I don't think we can all imagine, like, how that great feeling is going to be like. But I think that it's definitely possible, and I hope that we can get there. So thank you so much for giving me the opportunity, and I hope that my story inspires you to help in whichever way possible, to make sure that, those rural kids in Kenya and maybe even other parts of Africa have an opportunity to a good education. So thank you very much.